Hello, hello. Welcome to the Smarten Show.
Here we are again.
And here we are with
Here
you
we are.
again Tuesday evening on the LAM Network, School Pods Canada YouTube channel and Facebook page, and everywhere you see us and find us. But that's our main places. And so the Smarten Up Show, again, is here for the purpose of discussing everything education, parenting, just raising up young people and families.
That is right. And tonight we have one of the most fascinating topics that I love to talk about this stuff all the time. And I remember when I first got introduced to the concept, I dove into it because it transformed my life. I mean, I looked at the world entirely differently. And the whole concept is about personalities.
Yes, last week we talked about signs of healthy families, and we were talking about the fact that we obviously have to do things together as family, share memories, share experiences, learn together, have fun together, play games together. And we were talking about the fact that a lot of the activities we choose to do as a family should consider the interests of our children and reflect something that they would like to learn. And every family is different. That's because there are different personalities in each family, and the different personalities have to learn to work with each other, and we have to learn to understand what the other people in our family are interested in, what motivates them, in order to have this more cohesive and healthy family. And often when we look at family conflicts, it's only because they're just different personalities trying to work things out together. And how much easier would it be if we understood what our personalities are? Because we believe we are born with God-given personalities. We are all unique individuals. But of course, throughout the ages, like psychology and people who have studied people who study people have come up with several types of personalities, and they're quite accurate and have really withstood the test of time. And they're being the understanding of personalities is being used for recruiting and jobs, just assigning proper positions to people and roles in society. So we feel that this is a foundational understanding, not only for your family, but for our society as a whole.
Well, understanding one's temperament, personality, and the realization that there are categories that we can put people into. Now, one of the arguments I have here is, oh, you're pigeonholing people.
Yes. So, disclaimer, we're not pigeonholing anyone. It's just that when you observe people after some time, you notice certain patterns and certain things that stand out about different people. And then you start seeing that, oh, this person acts like that one. And chances are they have similar personalities, and that's why.
Yes, and when you begin to understand them, it's not that it limits you, because everybody is still unique. Everybody still is individual. Everybody has their own personality, but the way that we are wired and how we respond to certain things can be fairly predictable. And I have proven this over and over and over again, to the point where I've actually had a couple of people who have questioned whether I was stalking them, because I never met them before. And once I figured out what temperament they were, oh, well, you do this, and this is how you respond to certain things.
Yeah.
And they're looking at me as like, are you stalking me? Or, which is, now on Facebook, everybody stalks one another, but
we follow each other.
Yes.
Well, and the thing is, when you study personality, I have obviously, to complete my teaching degree, I've had to take some psychology. And one of the things, the concepts is that we often in psychology compare the human mind with a computer.
Well, yeah, because there are many people who believe that the computer is modeled after the human mind.
Right. And so it functions. There's input, there's output, there's variables and things like that. So
Mhm.
we want you to know that though we're kind of wired in, and really our neurons are kind of like electric pathways
Yep.
that are being created in our brain as we learn things. But we have certain wiring that we start off with from the manufacturer.
That's right.
So today we're going to give you a manual to
Yeah, and
to your
you know, I
children.
I first got introduced to this whole concept. It was 20 some odd years ago. At the time, I was doing professional recruiting. I was recruiting for financial institutions, bank, call centers, and things like that.
Yes.
And when the concept was presented to me, and I went out and bought the book that was recommended to me, and I'm telling you, I dove into this, and I used to hire for a call center for a bank, visa department, and it got to the point where within 30 seconds to a minute, usually I was able to identify what personality or temperament the individual was. And because we were using behavior style interviewing, it really, I would ask various questions based on how I felt that, candidate was,
What
what I needed to know about them.
Yeah.
And so if I felt that there was an area I needed to zero in on, I had a list of questions that I could, kind of drill down deep into it. And within 30 seconds to a minute, I knew which temperament that person was. I knew what their strengths and weaknesses were, and I knew how I was going to do the interview. And I was quite successful in my job. I hired quality people who were well suited for the position.
Yeah. And you want to match the person with the task that they would be assigned to do so that they thrive and do it well. Obviously, there's always the learning aspect that any skill can be learned, but when certain people have natural predisposition to something,
Yeah.
it is just so much easier for them to naturally walk into this role. Another aspect of personalities, because people would say, well, you can't really tell. People are so complex, and it is true. Another concept in psychology is nature versus nurture.
Right.
And though we start off our lives with certain wiring in our brain, certain personalities, certain potentials, they people like they've studied twins a lot, right? And even twins with the same, so it's nature versus nurture. So twins grow up in the same environment, so the same nurture, they get the same nurture
With the same DNA.
with the same DNA. So they end up having completely different personalities. So that shows you that there's a nature there that plays
For
a
sure.
role in twins, because nurtures tends to be quite similar and yet they turn out quite different. So that is the one study of the nature part, and which is what we're going to talk about today, the nature that we are born with. But there is always the nurture part that plays role on which characteristics are expressed. And so people with the same wiring, so people who are not related to one another but have similar personalities, they might look different and act differently because of the type of family they grow up in, the type of culture they grew up in, things that have happened to them throughout life. So this is why we're so complex. We're very dynamic, but yet there are certain types that have been identified, not by us, but well, you can tell us the story, the history of how this whole nature, nurture and nature thing started.
Yeah, and what you realize is that they're actually intertwined with each other, that nature and nurture, they work together.
Yeah.
So Hippocrates, who's considered to be the father of medicine about 2,300 years ago, he postulated that everybody's personality was determined by the color of fluids or humors or biles in their body. And he identified 4 basic ones. Now, there's many, many different models out there. You've got the disc model, which is very popular. You've got the different animals. You've got the different colors. There's
the colors.
There's all kinds. But it all goes back to Hippocrates' model. And he said that the 4 basic temperaments. You had the choleric, the sanguine, the melancholy, and the phlegmatic. And those are, of course, words that are so choleric, coming from the same word where we get colic, and that refers to anger. The sanguine is someone who is effervescent and fun-loving.
Filled with life.
Yeah.
Sanguine.
Yeah. Yes.
Was it blood? It came from blood, red
Yeah.
blood, and
That's the color associated with the choleric would be mostly associated with yellow, and we'll show you a diagram actually.
Okay, we'll color code it for you today.
Yeah. And then you have the melancholy that is kind of moody, depressive, symbolized or signified by black. And then the phlegmatic is someone who's very easygoing, very quiet, very low energy, and phlegmatic, being green because of phlegm. Okay, so slow.
Well, yeah. So when you talk about body fluids, I feel like I'm in class again. Kids like to talk about body function. So
yeah,
it could kind of sound a little bit gross, really, but Socrates was onto something when he was identifying those four main types. And Darryl's going to share with you in a moment. But the other thing is that we are kind of on a scale for each characteristic, and it's I guess the Myers-Briggs is another big personality assessment tool that is being used in the workplace.
Well, yeah, Myers-Briggs is more workplace adaptability, and
I'm talking about the way things are assessed, though. It's a sliding scale, so when we talk about sanguine, there's a sliding scale of sanguine. We do not see your entire slide on the sharing. This is some other PowerPoint.
No, this is the one, but
you have split screen. So forgive us for a moment, technical difficulties. We're going to stop sharing for a moment, and we are going to go to the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, so we're going to do that. All right.
And yes, we do want you to see our color-coded presentation today. So let's try sharing again.
Okay, so that's good. So now what I want to do...
Don't you want to share this one, though? Instead of...
No.
Don't you want to share this one instead of this? Okay. All right. Let's get back to sharing then. Yeah, that's the one you want to share, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So now you have to figure out how to share it, actually, again.
Yeah. Oops. All right. So
now, is it shared on our presentation?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out here.
So minimize that. Could you or just press a different tab?
Where is the?
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. I don't know. We don't really see ourselves right now. Okay. So you do need to. It's not sharing. So you need to get back to sharing.
Present, share screen, window.
This one.
That one.
Okay. So it's a few steps. Forgive us here for a moment.
Okay. And then add.
I think we're there, but how come we're not there? I think these are split screens, so you may want to choose a different screen and not split them like that.
Huh.
Yeah, you have split your screens. Okay, well, it seems like we are not.
I don't know why this is.
You have screen 1 and 2. It's a setup you've done. So we are going to get to that image. And momentarily, where is it? This one.
Okay. Yeah, there's something, the internet, I think, is a little bit wonky tonight.
Okay, so let's try presenting again.
All right. Present, share screen, window. Well, let's start with this one, okay?
Okay, well, let's see if we can see it.
All right, and
so you need to go in your, in your internet window there, and you need to see where we are at and share that.
Okay.
So you need to make it
And
bigger. There we are.
okay.
So this is, Daryl, did you prepare this or that was done for
This
you?
was done for me.
But based on what Daryl has been teaching, a friend of ours actually put this together. What we can do is, again, just like I promised last week, and I did so, we'll make it available in School Pods Canada Facebook group. We'll make this handout available because there's a lot of small text in here.
Yeah.
But we wanted you to see the concept, the color coding with the 4 colors and the 4 body fluids that describe the 4 main.
So here you
personality
have
types.
choleric. So both the top ones are extrovert, choleric and the sanguine. The sanguine and melancholy are more emotional. They make decisions based on emotion. The choleric and the phlegmatics are more logical in their decision making, and the melancholies and the phlegmatics are introverts.
So you have a vertical axis, which the top of the vertical axis is extrovert, the bottom of the vertical axis is introvert, and the horizontal axis left to right. So on the left is emotion driven or motivated, and to the right on the horizontal axis is, I guess, logic driven.
Yeah.
Motivated.
Now, what we have to also understand is that everybody's got 2 temperaments minimum. There's the occasional person that will have a combination of 3, but everybody's got a primary and a secondary.
You have a temperament. Yeah, you have you are mostly a combination of those 2 out of the 4. And you've taught me that there's a dominant one and
a secondary or submissive
one.
So now each of these, so you'll have someone who is predominantly choleric or predominantly melancholy, but then they'll also have a secondary one. So you can have 2 sanguines, but they'll be actually quite different from each other because their secondary temperament will be different. And the key thing to understand is that each of the temperaments has both strengths and weaknesses. And this is where the nurture comes into play, that the more of a positive and affirming and supportive environment someone is in, the more the strengths of that temperament will come out. And the more abusive, the more oppressive, the more negative an environment that person either was in or currently is in, the more of the negative aspects or the weaknesses of the temperament are going to come out. So this is why 2 people will never be identical. You will also have the different combinations where there will be different percentage. And this isn't exact science by any stretch of the imagination. There are tests that you can take, but you will have an approximation. Like someone could be 80% sanguine and then 20% phlegmatic. Someone else can be 55% choleric and 45% phlegmatic.
And people often say, as if they follow kind of the whole personality, if they've had to do testing throughout their lives for different jobs or different reasons, they say, oh, my personality has changed over time. I've become more introvert or become more. And we'll talk a little bit about that because perhaps you have developed certain characteristics within your personality, but you're still functioning within the personality you're born with.
Right.
So you don't really change personality. You just work on your strengths and minimize your weaknesses, hopefully, throughout your life.
and the whole purpose of God in giving us these temperaments is that He's got a plan for us to utilize them.
Yes.
And what He wants to do is He wants to augment and He wants to utilize the strengths, and He wants to bring healing to that area of your soul so that the weaknesses will start to disappear and start turning into strengths. So if we look, for instance, we'll deal with the 2 extroverts to start off with. The sanguine is the first one. They're very talkative, they're outgoing, they're enthusiastic. We actually were part of a leadership organization where they said that the mating call of a sanguine is woohoo.
Yes, because sanguines, I can speak from experience, sanguines are motivated by fun
Mm-hmm.
and excitement. And if it's not exciting, they don't want to do it.
That's right. So they're all in when it
It's
interests
fun.
them and it's enjoyable and it's fun.
And they want to do everything with others around. They don't want to do things alone.
Everybody needs to do it with me.
Yeah.
They're very warm and personable. They're very friendly, very compassionate. You can see all these up at the chart there. And they're very carefree. There's a very laissez-faire attitude. It's like, whatever.
Easygoing. More of a, yeah, you can get upset, but then easily get over it.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of.
See, that's the thing, is that sanguines can get really angry and then they'll forget about it 5 minutes later. It's like, what was I angry about? What are we doing now? And
yeah.
they're distracted by bright, shiny objects,
colors.
Some of the weaknesses, their sanguines are very weak-willed.
They kind of go with whatever the crowd's doing
because they're people pleasers by nature, and this is what drives them. They're unstable.
So they can change their mind quickly.
Yeah, very undisciplined, unreliable. They are very restless.
Mm-hmm.
So they're constantly wanting to get that next high, which is why sanguines tend to be the temperament that is most prone to addictions. They are egocentric. It's very much about me.
Yes, they can. They have hard time seeing anything beyond themselves, just because their world's just so vibrant and involved. I just wanted to add something from an educator's point of view. Those are probably the children that will be identified as ADHD in schools, most likely.
Almost all of them.
And I know a lot of parents who know that when the children has been labeled as ADHD, they're really of the sanguine personality. I have taught a child in the past who I was doing a Bible study with kids, and this one kid said, "May I walk around as we're doing this?" He couldn't sit for a long periods of time, and he circled around the table where I was having discussion with the kids, teaching them the Bible lesson. And when I would be done the Bible lesson, then I would obviously follow up questions like every teacher does. And you know what? This kid that was walking around the table was
seemingly not paying attention.
He did not look like he was paying attention because he was just circling around the table. He actually answered most of my questions, and that helped him learn the best. I know in big classrooms there's going to be chaos if we allow a bunch of kids to walk around, but usually it is not all of them that are sanguine that need that. So and this is where we are talking about this, because not only parents but teachers need to understand the personality concept, and that their kids just have different needs for learning. So
the sanguine comes into the room and everybody is usually drawn to them. They're the life of the party. They're fascinating. They tend to look even more attractive than physically they are, because they've got a very attractive personality.
Charismatic and attractive personality, just because they're fun, and they really tend to be more positive and excited, especially if they're healthy, in their nurturing.
And that is a key element.
Yeah.
So sanguines, and they tend to it's not 25% across the board, actually, in personality makeup as far as society goes.
True. So we're not kind of 25% of each personality. There tends to be more sanguines in proportion to all the other personalities in the world, correct?
Well, sanguines would be one of the more dominant ones.
Yeah.
Because
they're fun.
Because the world needs a lot of fun. I mean, you look at all the garbage that's out there right now,
and positivity. Yeah. So, but again, they only come with that positivity and fun if they are healthy. They may not be. And you have to kind of dig for that fun person buried in there if they've had a tough time.
Sure.
So that's sanguines, I think.
Okay. So why don't you deal with the next one?
Choleric. You want us to not talk about ourselves, but about the other person. So the choleric, usually people describe them the A-type personality in every room. So they're strong-willed. They're determined, and I'm just reading off here. They're independent. A lot of choleric children I've worked with, they don't want me to do things for them. They want to learn it on their own and do it by themselves.
I got it. Very independent.
Very independent, and they seem to be more mature. They're so independent. They are. Is this dynamic or
Yeah.
So
Optimistic,
optimistic,
practical.
Yes, practical. They're all
Now,
about.
The optimism of a
It's
choleric
not
is
necessarily positivity.
it's the optimism of a choleric is different from that of a sanguine.
Yes. The optimism of choleric is with determination, I can accomplish anything. It's just if I push hard enough, I'll get it.
Yeah. Sanguines believe things are going to get better. Cholerics are convinced that they can make things better.
Yeah, so
And
that's the difference.
So the optimism is based on what we can accomplish.
So yeah, so when you say optimism,
not that I would know anything about that.
No.
Yeah. So
practical. What is also productive?
Yep.
They are very much task oriented. They are about the goal and accomplishing the goal. That's why we call them the A-type personalities.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? They're a natural born leader, competent, and which one did I miss here?
That should be, well, deceptive. That should be a weakness, but anyway.
Okay, yeah. So if you want someone to lead, choleric usually naturally will take that role in a room. Let's talk a little bit about the weaknesses. So there's a lot of good things about cholerics.
Yeah, in time of crisis, you want a choleric to be.
They're not shaken. They're like, okay, we got to do something about it. Let's go and do something about it. They don't really get caught up in emotions and panic. It's like, just do something.
Yeah.
Very action prone, I guess.
Extremely prone to action. And
more so than sanguines because they have more focused action and activity.
Clerics are much more focused, as you said. They're more focused on the goal, whereas the sanguine is about the emotion and the fun.
Right. So the negative or weaknesses of a choleric, obviously, they tend to get angry and frustrated when things are not going towards the goal and people are all over the place. They could be sarcastic, and sarcasm, if not used well, could be a negative thing. They are domineering. They're insensitive. They're not concerned about emotions. So they could be proud or self-sufficient. So they believe that they can do anything, and pride can get in there.
And not wanting other people's help.
Right.
So they tend to discourage cooperation with others.
If you have had a child, no, I'll do it myself. Don't help me. That's kind of a choleric child. Don't help me. I could screw it up, but I'll do it by myself. So unbending, what else? Unemotional, and also I would say bossy, but what are the words that we have here?
Crafty.
So yeah, they could be determined to get what they want so much that they'll come up with plans that are not necessarily in everybody else's interest, but they just need to get it done.
And prone to hostility and bitterness.
Yeah, so they could be hostile and bitter. So if you have a child that gets angry easily, because things are just not getting done, and they could be impatient as well about things getting done. So that is another thing. They just need to be reminded to stick with things. And we said they're not emotional, not concerned with emotion, but anger does tend to come in there.
Well, anger is the one emotion that a cleric will feel. They're not usually driven by other emotions. They don't get caught up there.
Yeah.
Clerics tend not to make decisions based on emotion other than anger. So the anger is the one predominant emotion that will drive decision making. And most of the despots of the world, the dictators of the world, are cholerics.
Right. So they're natural born leaders, which could be a good thing until
they decide that
become despots.
You need to get out of the way.
Right. So, a smaller percentage of people in the world are choleric just because
10 to 15%, because if there are any more, the world would have blown up a long time ago.
Yeah, you don't want too many cholerics around. We appreciate them. It's just too many of them do not tend to do well.
Well, the insensitivity is because cholerics themselves are insensitive, and so they just assume everybody else is too. and they will say things. See, when you get two cholerics that are talking
they're very
to each other,
straightforward. They don't beat around the bush.
No, that was stupid. What were you? Oh, I don't know. And they're not offended when you tell them stuff like that. It was like, yeah, okay, that was dumb. I remember I was part of a Bible study years ago, and the man who was hosting it, very choleric. He was president of Toronto Hydro. He was a school principal, and he and we would sit down and we used to start bantering back and forth with each other. We would be firing insults at each other.
And see, that's the other thing. The love language of choleric is mild insults and kind of friendly picking at someone, just kind of teasing. Yeah, and to them that's friendly. To most other people it's not.
So this guy and we would just be going at, and someone would get a really good insult, and the other one would go, "Oh, that was good."
It's like keeping score in a game or something.
But the rest of the people were just sitting around appalled. They didn't know what to make of it.
Another thing about cholerics, I have to say that they do not hesitate. They're always certain that what's got to be done. And I know somebody, a speaker once said, and he was a choleric, so he could speak for that personality.
Yeah.
And he said, cholerics are
often
wrong, but never in doubt. Yeah. So that would be a weakness. Sometimes it would take some time for them to see that they're wrong, just because they're convinced that they're right. But you know what? They're not afraid to admit it once they get there. Oh yeah, okay, that was dumb. Okay, we need to switch strategy here.
And choleric, and the way that you know if you are a choleric is you think that there are too many idiots in the world.
Right. Well, people frustrate you because you're not compassionate. You just when you're goal oriented instead of people oriented, you can get frustrated with people and see them as
idiots.
As idiots.
And I'll never forget, there was one time I had preached at a church, and the pastor was away, but his daughter was running the service. She was about 30, 31, and she was a choleric sanguine. And we'll get into the combinations after, but a choleric sanguine is the most prone to activity of all the 12 temperament mixes.
Very energetic, probably the most energetic of all the personalities.
Well, yeah, because there's the goal oriented, but there's also the,
so stamina and determination in an energetic bundle.
Yep. And, like people enough where they're driven by fun and everything else until you say something dumb, and then, out it comes. And so I said to her, I said, do you know how you know you're a choleric? Same thing. I said, you think there are too many idiots in the world? And she went, I feel so exposed. It was like I had ripped the cover off of her or something like that, because here she was, this nice little pastor's daughter.
Because she knew better that you can't tell people that they're dumb. It's not a good thing. But, it's just the way she viewed the world, because she would see in a situation what needs to be done. And often cholerics are impatient for people to catch up with their vision, with their energy, and they see way ahead of time. So, cholerics could be visionaries, and just people can't keep up with them most of the time.
Well, because number one, they can't see what the choleric sees, and second of all, they're very impatient as to everybody else to catch up.
The cholerics patience. Yeah. You have some. We have a friend that prays for patience for you.
I'm gonna take her out one of these days too.
Well, so again, a lot of positives about the cholerics, but I know parents of choleric children have spoken to me that they have hard-headed child. There's a lot of books written about how to deal with your determined child. Well, chances are you have a choleric child. So one way to channel that energy and determination is to give them responsibilities.
And to challenge them.
To challenge them, give them responsibilities, make them feel like they're in charge of something. Obviously, as a parent, you know that you have to determine the parameters of that and what's safe and what's not. But because they're still children, they don't, even though they look mature and act mature. So you want them to have a duty and responsibility, and they'll respond well to that.
Yeah.
They like to help others, though they don't like to receive help. And so in order for them to receive help from you is you probably ask them for their opinion. So what do you think we should do, this or this? Give them kind of limited
Involve
choices.
them, give them ownership of the situation.
Yeah.
And cholerics, they're champions for the underdog too.
Yeah.
We don't like, we're zealots for justice and absolutely hate injustice. More concerned about truth than we are about feelings.
Absolutely. Which, everybody knows that could be a good thing, but that could also stifle others and prevent them from growing themselves.
Yeah, I mean, again, everything has to be balanced and everything's got to be healthy. And if you have someone who is a stickler for punctuality, chances are they're a choleric.
Yes, they like when you're on time.
Things are in order.
If you are a choleric parent, I mostly talk at School Pods Canada to choleric parents who have had difficulties homeschooling their children because they're impatient with their children. And it's not a weakness. It's okay to confess that. It's just that your personality is not the nurturing kind, because it is the goals that you are focused on. And again, that's where you could seek help, like School Pods Canada, or someone more nurturing can give you some pointers of how to nurture a child, because it doesn't come naturally to you. And it is okay. It is okay to be this way. It's okay for your child to have their personality. It's okay you as a parent to have your personality.
Right. The third temperament is the melancholy. And you'll know that if you have a melancholy child, first of all, they're very gifted.
They tend to have extreme gifting, and usually it's an artistic kind of way.
Yeah. If you've got a child who's gifted musically, now our son is not melancholy, but he is gifted with music.
And we'll talk why that is, because he's got the other personality that we haven't chatted about yet.
Yeah.
But it is a sign. So, and we're going to talk about how one personality could be confused by the other, because there's some overlap. But let's just introduce the melancholy. And
so the melancholies are gifted. They tend to be very deep thinkers. They're analytical. They are extremely sensitive. Very, very sensitive. Oh, sometimes overly so.
Yeah.
They tend to feel emotions a lot more strongly than others do.
Yeah.
They are perfectionists. Oh my goodness. And one of the reasons why they're afraid to make a decision is because they're afraid to make a mistake.
Yes, they're afraid to make a mistake, and and they just feel things more strongly. So sometimes their emotions prevent them from making a decision because they're just so strong, which this sensitivity could be a positive thing in terms of if somebody misses out on a detail or something that needs to be noticed, the melancholy child will notice it.
Yeah. The picture is ever so slightly crooked, although I notice things like that, and I don't have a drop.
Well, no, but that's just for that. They see everything a lot more clearly.
They'll see a spot on the floor. There's, everything's got to be just so. They're very much into aesthetics.
Yeah.
So that's part and parcel of that perfectionism and the giftedness. They're also very idealistic. I tell people that melancholies all live in utopia.
Yes, they often ask, why can it not be this way?
Yeah.
They really struggle when things are not going well in the world. They're affected more. You have here, they're loyal and they're self-sacrificing.
Yeah, they're very loyal. When a melancholy takes a long time to trust you, but when they do trust you, it's very hard to break that.
It's a full loyalty and trust.
Right. They're completely dedicated, which is why betrayal for them is so difficult. The weaknesses of the melancholy, and there are many of them, they can be very, very self-centered because the emotions are so strong. It's all about, satisfying those
when
feelings.
You feel things so strongly, your attention is focused in dealing, and you can end up being focused on your own in your own world. Yeah,
they're very moody. Cranky.
Moods can change quite suddenly and for no apparent reason. And sometimes they might not be able to explain why. They're just because they're sensing something.
Yeah.
They cannot explain it.
And I had this happen. I went out on a date with this girl many years before I met you. And she we were just walking through the park one day. This girl was actually over from Israel, and while we're walking in the park, all of a sudden she starts crying, and I said, "Well, what's wrong?" She says, "I don't know."
Right. So they can easily overcome with emotion, and that is not depression. It is just that they feel emotions more strongly.
Yeah.
They're very theoretical. They could get very negative if the world doesn't match the expectation, the idealistic expectation
Yes.
in their mind.
Very impractical too. So the theoretical thing, they like to analyze things, and one of the favorite questions of a melancholy is, well, what if?
What if? So they're into alternative scenarios. So let's just not look at what it is, but what if it could be this way? They like to go there because that's where they feel happier in utopia.
They're quite unsociable. They find it hard to relate to other people because
we're now into the introverted part of this spectrum.
Well, and they're task oriented.
Yeah, they are task oriented, so they want things to be done to perfection. So they spend their energy in that rather than building relationships with people.
Yeah, they like relationships with people. A few of them. They can't handle a lot of friends. Small
circle, yeah.
So it's usually a couple of very intimate and deep friendships. They can be very critical. There's a lot of negativity and
because of the perfectionism.
Yeah, and so they notice it in everybody else, and they'll highlight that. They are vengeful. They can take a long time. When you hurt them, they will nurse something for perhaps years.
Yeah, and so for melancholies, it's especially important for them to look into positive mindset, growth mindset, into therapy. They just need more help to get over things, so they need extra supportive environment.
A lot of melancholies end up in therapy later on in life.
And they're rigid. You have another word there is rigid. It's just because they want things to align their ideals rather than for them to adapt to the world.
Well, adaptability is very hard because they're slow to be able to adjust. See, sanguines are the quickest to adjust. They can flip on a dime, usually for no reason.
Wow, we talked about the negative
cholerics,
the weaknesses.
Cholerics
change their mind a lot.
Cholerics tend to be more adaptable because, well, it's the goal that's important, not necessarily the means. As a matter of fact, a lot of times the end justifies the means.
They don't give up easily.
No,
so that's
and
why.
So well, this didn't work. It's like if you saw the movie Jurassic Park, they talked about how when the raptors got loose, they were trying to get through the fence. And what they kept doing is they kept touching different parts of the electric fence in order to find out where the weakness is. That's kind of like a choleric.
So we want all our children to be resilient. Cholerics just
naturally wired that way.
do it.
And so melancholies, we didn't so much get into what they tend to be good at, but melancholies, they make good teachers. They're musicians. They surgeons,
artists, and anything that is details
requires
details. Because again, we talked about the fact that they could have combination of personality.
Yeah.
Even though sometimes melancholies can miss out on some details if they're not important to them.
Yes.
But usually they're really artistic, and we know contractors who do beautiful work because they're melancholy.
Yeah.
So they tend to work with their hands a lot because they like to create beautiful things.
Yes. Again, going back to the aesthetics. I worked with a contractor who was part melancholy.
That's who I'm referring to.
A lot of melancholy, and he would say, well, you see that imperfection over there? And I'd be looking and I would say, nope.
Yeah. So melancholies just they don't miss out on things. And so they need to really learn how to keep those emotions in check, how to deal with adversity and changes in the world. And so this is again, those would be the kids probably in school that, oh goodness, will probably feel alone and isolated, the loner kind of kids. So positive, negative things. So we want to talk about the phlegmatic next, because we do like phlegmatics.
Everybody likes phlegmatics.
So
mostly.
The phlegmatics are your stable. So let's talk about the strengths. They're calm. if there is a situation, a phlegmatic will be the calmest. They're like a solid, I don't know, something very solid. They're very solid.
They're like a rock.
Like a rock. Yes, rock is the word. And they don't tend to be really emotionally disturbed during different.
They don't. Although phlegmatics can be sensitive, they don't allow themselves to. It's very
their
difficult.
Their focus is to remain calm.
But they're very difficult to read because they keep their emotions close to the vest.
Yeah. So they don't react. They're not quick to react to things.
No. They're easygoing.
They're easygoing. They are dependable. You can rely on them. They are efficient.
Yes.
So yes, they though they're introverts, their task. They like to save their energy. They don't like to expand a lot of energy.
Give the job to a lazy man, he'll find an easier way to do it, and that tends to describe a phlegmatic. A phlegmatic is someone who wants to get things done, but they don't want to expend a lot of effort, and so usually they'll figure out easier ways to do it. They are very conservative in that, again,
they don't like change.
They hate change.
They love routine. Yes. So conservative in the sense that change is difficult for them. So they like to remain
because change
stable.
Requires energy.
And they don't have a lot of energy.
They don't know. They tend to tire quickly. They love sleeping in. They love going to bed early. And
so they like their sleep.
And they love couches.
Yeah. Practical.
I had a guy who was helping me in ministry years ago, and he was a phlegmatic, and we went to a church one night, and I got up there and I did my message, and then I was looking for him after, and I ended up going out the back of the sanctuary into the hallway, and I found a couch with him resting on it, and I said, only you.
Well, they love leisure and rest. Yes. So they would find anything associated with rest. Yeah. So we're talking about their practical. Again, they want things done with the least amount of effort. They are, does it say leader?
Yes, they are.
Well, they're leader when stability is required, when everybody's panicking.
Phlegmatics make good middle managers. So as long as they know what the task is, the assignment is, and is a lot of repetition involved.
So they're not these A-type personality leader. They're just a stable and steady kind of leader that doesn't give up and people can rely on.
Yeah.
They're diplomatic. They do not like to get upset about things. They do not like confrontation.
Hate conflict.
So diplomacy is a strength for them, and they are
humorous.
Yes. But their sense of humor is a dry sense of humor.
Very dry. You will have sometimes difficulty in recognizing a phlegmatic sense of humor. They'll crack a joke and they won't smile. And
they'll sit with a straight face and they just would pause to see if you got the humor there, because the intonation, their tone will not change.
Yeah, they tend to be very monotone. The sanguines always miss the phlegmatic's humor.
So the phlegmatics just have to wait for the sanguine. Oh, wait a minute, that was a joke. Oh,
okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. The weaknesses of a phlegmatic are they can be stingy. They don't like giving of themselves or anything.
And that is only because, again, it requires a lot of energy and effort. They like to conserve, but
they're fearful too.
And yes, they want to make sure that they have a foundation that gives them stability. And if you give too much, then you don't know if you're going to have enough to have comfort and stability.
Yeah, because remember, all phlegmatics have a beaver dam, a place of safety that they can go to. And it could be a book, it can be a place, it can be a relationship or something where they find comfort and safety.
Right. And so they would defend that safety and protection. So that's what stingy is. It's, otherwise they are generous, but they just want to make sure that they have enough for them to be safe and secure.
Because they want security above all else.
They tend to be faithful. So you can, because they're so calm and steady, you can rely on them. They're very faithful that way. When you assign them a task, you know that they will be on it for as long as it takes to complete.
Right.
There's no.
Phlegmatics are very indecisive. because they don't want to be boxed into something. They don't want to be locked down, so they will procrastinate. They're terrible, terrible procrastinators. Why do today what you can put off till tomorrow? They love to be spectators. They don't like to get involved. They tend to be watchers of people.
They're passive. Yeah, they tend to be
Very,
more
very passive. They are very self-protective. So again, going back to the whole idea of wanting security and safety, they will do whatever it takes in order to protect themselves, especially if there's a lot of conflict going on around them. So if you have a phlegmatic child and there's a lot of fighting that's going on between the parents,
that child can actually tune out and
start creating other realities.
Well, that and it's just exclude him or herself from whatever's going on around. Just build a wall around them, emotional wall.
They're selfish, and they can be very unmotivated.
So they're not always selfish, but they can be selfish if they feel that they're not safe and secure.
Well, selfishness is characteristic of all the temperaments. Sanguines are very selfish.
Nature. Yeah.
Cholerics are very selfish, and then people usually end up dying. Melancholies are selfish, and everybody gets hurt around them because they insult people and stuff like that. So you have an idea now again, and we don't have enough time to talk about this week, so we'll get into it next week. So sanguines tend to be very good at sales. Mm-hmm. They are good public speakers because they love the sound of their own voice. They're good motivators of people.
Yes. Is it okay if I took the diagram out?
Yeah.
Okay. So each one of us has strengths and weaknesses. And sometimes it's interesting because if you have a parent and a child personality that are kind of across from each other and complete opposite, it could create a little bit of difficulty in dealing with one another. For example, you being of the choleric personality, you have difficulty understanding our phlegmatic son, who is not very motivated. He needs a little bit more encouragement and nurturing to feel brave enough to try new things because he likes those routines.
Yeah.
In the meantime, a choleric child will try things that their parents will be horrified about what they're trying. Just because they just want to go ahead and learn new skills, new tasks, learn new things, and not afraid to do it.
Cholerics tend to have a higher amount of testosterone, I think, is what drives the personality, of course, from a hormonal point of view. And so there's a higher tolerance for pain. There is, when it comes to things that I like extreme things. I like things very spicy. I like things strong. I like things dark. I like things, whatever it is that's extreme. I like intense feelings.
Intensity.
Yeah, I love intensity. And it's not something that I, manufacture. It's just the way that I'm wired. Whereas someone who's more delicate and easygoing and gentle won't experience that.
They don't like spicy.
Yeah. Cholerics make good, they'll lead almost anything.
Yeah.
Not always well, but the natural propensity of a choleric is to be in something where it involves like project management, high stress jobs. Cholerics tend to operate very well under pressure because we don't buckle. We don't tend to get overwhelmed as easily. We have a much higher tolerance for negativity. We have a much higher tolerance for just because of the determination.
Right. And so the reason we're going over these personalities is that when you're in a family with all these different personalities, it's been my philosophy for many years. I cannot apply the same discipline to two children, the same methodology to two children that are completely different personalities.
Well, and when you and I met, you were still teaching at the time.
I was a public school teacher, and I was a fairly new public school teacher. And to me, it was just difficult to know how to apply discipline in the classroom, how to motivate kids in the classroom. And when I was introduced to these personalities, I realized if I work with the personalities of the children instead of against them, or try to treat them all the same, at first, I had this communist idea that everybody should be treated the same. And you know what? Because that's what we feel like it's fair, but now fair is not treating everyone the same, but trying to understand who they are, who their personalities are,
right,
and then motivating them with what motivates them, and helping nurture the things that they are insecure about.
right. So we've come to the end of our show, and that was very quick. So next week we'll carry on part 2 of this discussion, where we'll discuss the combinations,
Yeah.
and you'll be able to really understand the most important aspect of understanding the temperaments is to understand who you are.
Yeah.
And after I got involved in this and started studying it, I taught my brother this whole concept. And he came back to me after he said, now I understand why we've been fighting for 40 years over the same issue.
Absolutely. So you have to understand who you are, because as we spoke in a few shows ago, is that your sphere of influence is your actions and your thoughts and your feelings. And so you have to start with working on yourself, developing your strengths,
Mm-hmm.
and minimizing your weaknesses, which will then translate in better relationships. And we have stories how people have gotten jobs because they understand personalities better.
Yep.
It could open a whole world of things. And our goal is to help families be healthier and happy and function better together.
Yeah. So next week, we'll carry on part 2 of this discussion, and I trust it's been an encouragement to you. So until that time, have a great week. Stay tuned for the next show here on Messianic Lamb Network, if that's what you're watching on. And if you're watching this on review on either the Facebook page or YouTube channel, stay tuned till on
yes.
School Pods Canada. Stay tuned till next week. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.